The mist fell like whispered secrets across the cobblestones of Edinburgh, wrapping the city in its melancholy embrace. Overhead, the Scottish sky hung heavy with twilight's burden, a canvas of deep indigo bleeding into charcoal. Mei Chun pulled her cardigan tighter around her slender frame as she stepped out of the corner shop where she'd just finished her night shift. Her shoes splashed through puddles that mirrored the scattered streetlights above. In one hand, she clutched a small paper bag containing a single cheese and tomato toastie, the last of her dinner leftovers, still barely warm. The street was nearly deserted, save for the occasional glow of passing headlamps and the distant rumble of the last tram disappearing around the bend. Then she noticed him, a figure standing motionless beneath the hazy glow of an old Victorian lamppost, looking as though he had nowhere to go and nothing left to hope for. His jacket hung askew on his frame, drenched through, clinging to his shoulders like it had surrendered to gravity itself. He was trembling visibly even from a distance. May hesitated only briefly before calling out, "Hey there, the one standing like a forgotten statue. Are you all right?" Before we continue with today's story, if you're enjoying what you've heard so far, please hit that subscribe button. Every new subscriber helps me keep sharing these inspiring tales that touch your day. Thank you for your support. The man flinched slightly, but didn't retreat. His face remained partially hidden in shadows, but as May approached, she could see how gaunt his features were, his cheekbones sharp beneath several days' worth of stubble. Raindrops traced paths down his face that might have been tears. His eyes, though, they held something unexpected, not desperation, but a profound depth, as if he'd forgotten what simple kindness looked like and couldn't quite recognize it now. May extended the paper bag. "Look, it's not much, but it's still warm. Please take it." The man shook his head slowly. "I don't need charity. Keep it for yourself. Don't be stubborn," she chided, her tone unexpectedly maternal. "Eat it. I'm not walking away while someone stands in this miserable weather with an empty stomach." His eyes met hers for a fleeting moment. Something flickered there, not gratitude exactly, but recognition, as if witnessing something rare and precious. He accepted the bag with slightly trembling fingers that brushed against hers momentarily. "Thank you," he murmured, barely audible above the patter of rain. "You're welcome," May replied with a small smile, brushing a damp strand of black hair from her cheek. "The heaters are still running inside. Come warm up before you catch your death out here." He glanced toward the shop's glowing windows, then back to her. "No, thank you. I should be on my way." She tilted her head, studying him. "Are you certain? I don't care what circumstances brought you here, but I'm not about to let someone collapse from pneumonia right outside my shop." His lips twitched, almost forming a smile. "I'll be fine, but thank you for the toes tie and the humanity." May gave a half shrug. "It's not exceptional. It's just basic human decency." He bowed his head slightly, then turned and walked away, disappearing into the misty darkness, his footsteps nearly silent against the wet stones. May remained standing for a moment, puzzled. There was something about him she couldn't quite place. He carried himself like someone who had once commanded attention or respect before something fundamental had been stripped away. Not just material possessions, but perhaps trust, purpose, belonging. She made her way home to her tiny flat above the old laundrette, her own burdens weighing heavily. Her father's medical bills formed a discouraging stack on her kitchenette table. She'd been working double shifts since autumn began, doing everything possible to keep the electricity connected and the debt collectors at bay. There was never quite enough, but somehow she always had something to give, even a simple toes tie, even to a stranger. Liam Harrington stood in the shadow of a closed newsagent's across the street, watching her fade into the misty night. The taste of the toes tie lingered, not just on his palate, but in his memory. It had been so long since someone had offered him anything without ulterior motives. He leaned against the cold stone wall, eyes briefly closing. She was different. She hadn't asked his name or what had brought him to this state. She hadn't looked at him as a problem requiring a solution or avoidance. She hadn't tried to impress, pity, or pretend. She had simply offered a small act of kindness, an inexpensive sandwich, a warmth that felt genuine amid the chill. Liam Harrington, once the celebrated founder of Britain's most innovative tech companies, now invisible by choice, whispered into the empty night, "She's different." And for the first time in a long while, the damp cold didn't seem quite so unbearable. 3 days later, the mist had lifted, but the chill remained. Edinburgh's streets glistened with melting frost, and the wind cut through the narrow closes like a warning of winter's stubborn return. May was halfway through reorganizing the confectionery display when the bell above the corner shop door gave its familiar tired jingle. She glanced up, expecting to see one of the regulars searching for cigarettes or lottery tickets. Instead, it was him. He looked markedly different, cleaner, more composed. His coat was new, or at least newly acquired, a charcoal wool that fit his shoulders properly in a way no second-hand garment ever could. His shoes were polished. His hair, no longer plastered to his head by rain, had a subtle wave to it. Yet his face remained the same. Those same eyes, that same quiet intensity. May blinked in surprise. You again. Liam offered a slight smile. I wanted to thank you properly. She raised an eyebrow. Most people just say thanks and move on. You've returned looking like you're from an entirely different world. He chuckled, glancing down at his coat. I clean up reasonably well. May leaned her elbows on the counter. So you're not homeless? No, he replied simply. There was no elaboration, no apology, just a straightforward honesty in his voice that made her more curious than suspicious. She tilted her head. Then what were you doing out in that downpour? Soaked and starving, dressed like someone who'd given up? Liam held her gaze for a long moment before answering. Disappearing. I needed to vanish for a while. May studied him. He didn't fidget. He didn't overshare. But there was weight behind his words, a heaviness she recognized, the kind that settled behind people's eyes when they'd shouldered too much for too long. You found a strange place to disappear, she observed. I found a stranger who reminded me what authentic kindness feels like. She blinked at that. He glanced around the shop at the humming refrigerators and shelves of snacks. May I ask you something? That depends, she replied, crossing her arms. Are you planning to psychoanalyze me, or just make conversation? Neither, he said. I simply want to understand what makes someone like you give their last bit of food to a complete stranger. May exhaled, her shoulders relaxing slightly. Because I've been that stranger before. Liam nodded slowly. And yet you still give? She shrugged. It was just a toastie. No, he said gently. It was considerably more than that. Their conversation stretched on. He asked questions, not with polite detachment, but as if he genuinely wanted to know about her job, her father's health, the long hours, the mounting bills. The fact that May had abandoned university after 2 semesters to work full-time. He listened with a focus that felt uncommon, disarming. Yet something nagged at the edges of May's awareness. When he reached in his coat pocket to pay for a bottle of water, his sleeve lifted just enough to reveal the unmistakable gleam of something expensive, a watch. Not just any watch. Her former employer at the gallery had owned one, constantly drawing attention to it. She'd seen enough advertisements in glossy magazines to recognize the distinctive brand, the kind of timepiece that cost more than her annual rent. She said nothing, just rang up his purchase and handed over his change as if nothing unusual had happened. But her mind was racing. That evening, after her shift ended, May walked to the cafe across the street for a cup of tea and a scone she couldn't really afford. One of the regulars, an older woman named Fiona who worked at a boutique in the Royal Mile, sat beside her at the counter. You work at that corner shop, don't you? Fiona asked, stirring honey into her Earl Grey. Yes. Have you heard about that tech mogul? Liam something or other? Used to be in all the financial pages, then vanished. Bit of a mystery. May's fingers tightened around her teacup. What sort of tech mogul? Major software developer. Innovative interfaces, mostly. Rumor has it he had some kind of breakdown. Walked away from everything. Nobody's seen him in the public eye for months. May try to sound nonchalant. Liam Harrington. Fiona snapped her fingers. That's him. Handsome fellow, intense eyes. Always looked like he was keeping the world's secrets. May gazed out the window at the darkening streets. So he really was someone. Not just someone, but someone significant, someone wealthy, someone with absolutely no reason to stand beneath a lamppost accepting a stranger's toastie, unless he was running from something even colder than Edinburgh mist. Fiona continued talking, but May had stopped listening. Her thoughts circled back to that rainy evening. The way he had looked at her, the way he had initially refused the food, the way he had thanked her as if it meant more than she could possibly understand. And now the watch, the coat, the questions, the rumors. She wrapped her fingers around her teacup again and whispered to herself, barely audible over the clatter of dishes behind the counter. What is he hiding from? The invitation came wrapped in hesitation. Liam had lingered by the counter one quiet afternoon, tapping his fingers nervously against a packet of mints. May was restocking shelves, pretending not to notice his fidgeting until he cleared his throat. I was wondering, he began, if you might allow me to take you to dinner. May arched an eyebrow. Like a proper restaurant dinner? Nothing extravagant, he said quickly. Just a meal and conversation. A small gesture of thanks. She hesitated. She didn't date customers. She didn't have time for socializing. But something about the way he asked, earnest, uncertain like a man unaccustomed to needing anything, made her pause. All right, she said after a long breath. But I choose the place. They met at McLaren's, a cozy old pub with weathered wooden booths, laminated menus, and a jukebox that worked only when properly cajoled. May preferred it because the food was affordable and the bartender never rushed you if you nursed a single drink all evening. They ordered cottage pie and vegetable soup. Liam surprised her by knowing exactly how to fold a paper napkin into a tiny bird. She laughed more than she had intended to. He relaxed more than he had expected. Over shortbread biscuits and refilled teacups, their conversation ventured beyond polite small talk. May told him about her father, how he had endured 2 rounds of treatment, how the medical debt had crushed them more severely than the diagnosis ever had. She spoke of her previous job at the small art gallery, before practicality had forced her to set aside that passion. I used to dream of having my own photography studio, she said, staring into her tea. Now I just hope I can keep the heat on through winter. Liam listened attentively, nodding. His eyes were heavy with thought. When she asked about him, he hesitated, then set down his cup. I used to work in technology, he said carefully. May blinked. Like IT support? No, development and innovation. Building systems. I ran a company, she tilted her head. Ran. He exhaled slowly. I built it from nothing. It became something significant. Perhaps too significant. May leaned back. So you were successful? I was wealthy, he corrected. That's not always the same thing. He looked at her then, more vulnerable than before. I lost myself in it. The money, the image, the constant noise. One day, I realized no one around me knew who I truly was or cared. They only valued what I could provide them. She remained quiet. I walked away, he said. Left it all. Not because I hated what I'd built, but because I hated who I had to become to maintain it. May frowned slightly. And now, he met her gaze. Now I'm trying to discover what truly matters. Who am I without all of it? Whether someone could see that version of me, and not just the bank account. Then, too softly to sound dramatic, I'm a millionaire, May. But I'd like to think I'm more than that. Or, at least, I hope to be. The words settled between them, echoing louder than anything else that evening. May blinked once, then again, and suddenly the warmth of the pub, the comfort of the food, all turned cold. You're a millionaire, she said flatly. Yes. And you've been pretending to be destitute. No, I never pretended. I simply didn't tell you. You let me believe you were struggling. You let me feel sorry for you. No, he said quickly. You never pitied me. That's what made me want to return. May's jaw tightened. I gave you food. I invited you to warm up. I didn't do that for your gratitude or your money. I know. Then why tell me this now? Were you waiting for the perfect moment to impress me? No, he said, leaning forward. I told you because I trust you. Because I want to be honest with you. She stood abruptly, her chair scraping backward. Heads turned. She didn't care. You think you're being honest now? After letting me believe you were someone else? May, no. You don't get to do this. You don't get to decide when to be authentic. She grabbed her coat and stormed out. The next day, Liam came to the corner shop. He stood outside, hands buried deep in his coat pockets, face pale but determined. When May stepped out for a break, he approached with quiet urgency. I'm sorry, he said. I never intended to deceive you. You did. I wanted you to know me without the titles, without the headlines. I didn't plan any of this. I just didn't want to frighten you away. May folded her arms. You lied by omission. I know, he said, voice tight. But everything else I said, everything I felt was genuine. I was simply afraid that if I told you too soon, I'd lose the only real connection I've made in years. She stared at him, conflicted. The pain in his eyes was unmistakable. So was the complication. So was her confusion. After a long silence, she exhaled. Fine. One more conversation. One. No more secrets. No more, he nodded. May turned back toward the door, but paused. Inside, her heart was a kaleidoscope of questions and one stubborn whisper. What if he's telling the truth? They didn't call it dating, not exactly. But May and Liam began seeing each other more frequently. It started with small gestures. Tea after her shift, shared lunch on a bench in Prince's Street Gardens, a walk through the old town where centuries-old stones told stories longer than either of their lifetimes. There were no grandiose gestures, no fine dining experiences, just cobblestone streets and street food vendors, laughter over paper napkins, quiet glances that lasted a heartbeat too long. Liam never tried to impress her anymore. He arrived in simple attire, asked more than he answered, and seemed content simply to be near her. And May, despite her wariness, found herself looking forward to those moments more than she was prepared to admit. One Saturday afternoon, they wandered through an artisan market nestled between the old university buildings. May paused before a stall selling handcrafted photo albums bound in reclaimed leather and vintage fabric. She touched one with a botanical pattern, running her fingers along the stitching. I used to create things like this before life became complicated. Liam watched her. Do you still take photographs? She shook her head. Not in ages. Feels like another lifetime. You should. May turned to him. What for? For yourself, he said. For the artist who still dreams, even when she doesn't speak of it. She laughed, shaking her head. You make it sound so simple. It isn't, he said, but it matters. Later that week, he brought her a simple digital camera. No fanfare, just the gift, a quiet gesture. She unwrapped it slowly, examined it, then looked at him with a small, unreadable smile. One evening, they wandered farther than usual and found themselves in a quiet university courtyard, nearly empty under the deepening purple sky. They sat on a stone bench beneath an ancient oak, their shoulders almost touching. May kicked at the gravel with her shoe. Do you ever miss it? Liam looked at her. What? The old life. The recognition. The influence. He exhaled slowly. Sometimes. Not the chaos, but the clarity. When you're building something meaningful, your purpose is defined. When you stop, it's easy to lose your way. He paused. I had this interface design once, my magnum opus. It was subtle, intuitive, everything I believed in, but it failed spectacularly. Critics eviscerated it. Sales plummeted. People called it self-indulgent and disconnected from user needs. May glanced at him, surprised. That was yours. He nodded. That was mine. Afterward, I stopped innovating. I handed the company to my board. Told myself I was finished. May was quiet. I failed, he said simply, and I allowed that failure to convince me I wasn't worth a second chance. She looked down at her hands, then spoke softly. I was engaged once to someone I thought was supportive. He helped care for my father, told me he believed in my potential. Then one day, he said I was too much work, that my situation was too burdensome. Liam's jaw tensed visibly. May looked up at the darkening sky. I think I stopped trusting after that. Not just others, but myself. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Liam said quietly, he was wrong. She turned to him. You're not too much. You're exactly enough. And you're strong in all the ways that truly count. May felt her throat constrict. The air between them changed. Warmer, gentler. She could sense it. The attraction. The possibility. A connection that wasn't just hers, but fear coiled in her chest like a whispered warning. She wasn't ready. Not for this, not for him. She stood, brushing off her jeans. It's getting late. I should head home. Liam nodded, rising beside her. He didn't press. He didn't question why her voice had shifted or why she suddenly avoided his gaze. He simply walked her to her door, said goodnight, and left her with the space she clearly needed. That night, May sat on the edge of her bed, the camera in her lap. She traced its contours with her finger, but didn't turn on. Her mind was crowded with questions about dreams, about trust, about Liam. She looked toward the window where the city lights twinkled like thoughts she couldn't articulate. Is he really this genuine? She whispered to the darkness. Or am I just hopeful again? It happened on a Tuesday, unremarkable, overcast, the kind of day that promised nothing special. May had just finished her shift and was heading to meet Liam at their usual spot by the university gardens when a sleek silver car pulled up outside the shop. A woman emerged, balanced on heels too precarious for Edinburgh's uneven pavements, wearing a designer trench coat that likely cost more than May's quarterly rent. Her movements were precise, purposeful. Her eyes surveyed the street, as if appraising property. May Chun, the woman asked, approaching. May blinked. Yes. The woman smiled without warmth. I'm Victoria Powell. I used to be Liam's business partner. Among other things. May's stomach nodded. I see. Victoria's tone sharpened. Let me be perfectly clear. I understand what Liam is doing here. This little escapade of disappearing, of pretending to be ordinary, and I know exactly who you are. May crossed her arms. Do you? Victoria laughed softly, cruelly. You think he's fallen for you? That this means something significant? Come now. You're a shop assistant with a tragic background. You're this month's distraction, darling. Nothing more. May's expression hardened. You're wasting both our time. No, Victoria said, stepping closer. I'm protecting my investment. The board wants him back. The industry is waiting, and you are complicating matters. He isn't himself when he's with you. He's soft, unfocused. May remained silent, her hands clenched. Victoria smirked. Do you really want to be responsible for him throwing away everything he built? Silence stretched between them. Walk away quietly, Victoria continued, or I will remind the world why Liam Harrington vanished in the first place. I have emails, contracts, missteps he would prefer remain buried. Then, almost as an afterthought, and let's be honest, you're hardly equipped for his world, are you? You can barely manage your own circumstances. May's jaw clenched. She wanted to shout, to fight back, but the words stung precisely because they echoed her own buried fears, that she didn't belong, that she would never be enough. She didn't meet Liam that evening. She turned off her phone, went straight home, lay fully dressed on her bed, and stared at the ceiling until the shadows lengthened, unable to determine which was worse, losing him or dragging him down with her. Liam appeared at her door the next morning, his voice ragged with concern. I went to the gardens. I waited. What happened? May looked exhausted, paler than usual. Someone came to see me. He stiffened. Victoria. She nodded. She said things. Ugly things about you, about me. Liam's jaw tightened. She had no right to approach you. She threatened to ruin you if I didn't step away. I don't care what she threatens, he said sharply. I left that world, and I won't let her drag either of us back into its toxicity. May shook her head. She called me poor, said I was a distraction, said I would damage everything you've built. Stop, he said. None of that is true. She looked up at him, eyes damp but defiant. But she's not entirely wrong, is she? I don't belong in your world. Liam stepped forward, took her hand. Then perhaps the problem lies with my world, not with you. Later that day, he made the call. One call to one very influential person who owed him a favor. By nightfall, Victoria's threat had evaporated quietly, permanently. The emails disappeared, the leverage dissolved. She would not speak out again, not without facing the consequences of her own. But none of it erased the wounded look in May's eyes. They sat in the university gardens again that evening. The bench felt colder than before, more distant. May spoke first. You fought for me. I would do it again without hesitation. She looked down at her hands. But what happens next time when you can't? Liam was silent. May turned to him, voice unsteady. I don't want to be the reason you lose what remains of the life you built. I care about you too much for that. He reached for her gently. I'm not afraid of losing anything material, May. I'm afraid of losing you. But she withdrew her hand. I'm not trying to push you away, she whispered. But I don't want to pull you down with me, either. Liam looked at her, his heart heavy. I can bear the weight if you'll let me. May shook her head, rising slowly. I need time to believe that. Then she walked away, and he let her go, because sometimes love means remaining close enough to wait, but far enough to allow for healing. Snow fell softly that morning, transforming Edinburgh into a pristine wonderland. The harsh edges of buildings, the relentless bustle of traffic, all softened into a gentle hush. Liam walked beside May through the Royal Mile, where ancient buildings wore their white mantles like royal regalia. She had finally agreed to see him again, but her hands remained in her coat pockets, her gaze directed forward. He had waited, and now he had something to say. They paused by a frozen fountain, ice crystals clinging to its edges like suspended breath. May leaned against the stone, arms crossed. I need you to know something, Liam said. She glanced at him. I love you. No embellishment, no preamble, just the simple truth. May, I love how fiercely you care for people. How you gave me your last bit of food without knowing who I was. How do you make this city feel like somewhere I want to remain? May's jaw tightened. You don't have to say that. I want to because it's real. She shook her head. You don't understand. This can't work. You come from a different reality, Liam. I'm just surviving. You're not trapped. I work 2 jobs. I live paycheck to paycheck. I haven't had proper health insurance in years. I know. And what happens when your former life calls you back? When another Victoria appears? He stepped toward her. She turned away. I can't endure that again. I can't be left behind. She moved to leave, but her foot slipped on the icy stones. With a startled cry, she fell hard. May! Liam rushed to her side, kneeling in the snow. Are you all right? It's just a sprain, she muttered, wincing. Let me help you. She resisted briefly, then allowed him to lift her, carrying her as if she weighed nothing. At her flat, he wrapped her ankle, prepared tea, and sat beside her in companionable silence. Why do you care this much? She finally asked. Because you were the first to truly see me. Not Not for wealth, not for status, just for who I am. He looked at his hands, then back at her. I came here to escape the noise, the fame, the pretense. But what I discovered was authenticity in. A tear slid down her cheek. I'm not perfect, he said. But you make me believe I could be more than my past. May began to cry, soft, broken sobs that had nothing to do with her injured ankle. Liam reached for her hand. She allowed him to hold it momentarily. I want this, she whispered. But I'm terrified. If I lose it. She pulled her hand away, curling into herself. I wish I could believe in it. Liam remained beside her, silent, because love is sometimes not about forcing open doors. Sometimes it's waiting just on a threshold. The gossip spread faster than May could have anticipated. It began as whispers, innocent curiosity thinly disguised as judgment. That's her, isn't it? The shop girl is dating Liam Harrington. Please. She must be a calculated gold digger. By week's end, the whispers morphed into laughter, and a laughter into stares. At work, her colleagues dropped comments with surgical precision. Nice boots, May. Did your millionaire boyfriend buy them? You've got that dating up glow. What's your secret? Be ordinary and get lucky. May tried to laugh it off, attempted to bury the sting beneath professionalism and silence. But it smoldered within her. Every word, every glance felt like smoke filling her lungs. Across the city, Liam faced his own audience. At a technology conference, a former colleague from London had said, swirling a glass of scotch, we all experience our rebellion phases. Just don't become too attached to your working-class muse. Another joked, it's charming, like your own personal feel-good drama. Liam set down his glass with deliberate calm. She's not a phase, he said, his voice dangerously quiet. She's the best thing that's ever happened to me. The laughter faltered, but the judgment lingered, oppressive as ever. May called Liam one night, voice unsteady. I think I need to leave, just for a while, until this dies down. He was quiet. You're not the problem, May. They are. I can't live like this, being scrutinized, whispered about. I can't walk through my neighborhood without feeling like a spectacle. Then let's leave together. Anywhere. Say the word. She shook her head, tears sliding down her cheeks. I don't want you sacrificing your life for me. I'm not sacrificing anything. I'm choosing you. But she couldn't hear it fully, not through the noise in her own mind. The doubt, the shame, the belief that perhaps love like theirs wasn't meant to withstand the real world's judgment. Then came the interview. Liam was scheduled for a brief segment on a local Edinburgh morning program to discuss a youth coding initiative he had quietly funded. It was intended as a simple, positive feature. He sat in the studio chair beneath bright lights, dressed in a simple gray jumper and jeans. No stylist, no pretense. The host smiled, polite yet probing. We've all heard the rumors, Liam. You've been seen around the city with someone quite unexpected. Liam didn't flinch. I have, he replied. Her name is May Chun. The host leaned in. And who is she to you? Liam smiled, unhurried and certain. She's the woman I love. A moment of silence. The studio, the city, and the morning itself seemed suspended in time. I met her on a miserable night, he continued. When I was at my lowest point, she gave me the last of her dinner, not because she recognized me, but because she's the type of person who gives even when she has very little. He looked directly into the camera. She didn't fall for my name. She didn't want my wealth. She saw me when I was invisible to everyone else. And no amount of gossip or mockery can diminish what she means to me. The segment aired live. Within hours, it was everywhere, shared, reposted, quoted. I love her for her kindness. The phrase became a headline. Public sentiment shifted like a changing tide. Messages flooded the station. Comments multiplied. We need more people who speak like this. May sound like a woman with a heart of gold. Finally, a love story that feels authentic. May watched the video alone, curled on her sofa, a blanket wrapped around her like protection. She watched him say her name, observed his eyes when he spoke about her, as if she were precious beyond measure. She wept, not from pain, but from something even harder to contain, hope. The next day, snow fell again, lighter this time, like confetti drifting from the heavens. May walked to the bookshop where she knew Liam would be. He always sought refuge there when he needed quiet. She stepped inside, her heart racing, and found him in the photography section, holding a book of Edinburgh landscapes with fingers that trembled almost imperceptibly. He turned when he sensed her presence. For a moment, neither spoke. Then May crossed the room, stopped inches from him, and whispered, "Why would you do that?" "Because I love you," he said. "You risked everything." "No, I finally said what matters most." She looked up at him, eyes glistening. I'm scared. I know. I still don't know if I belong in your world. Then we'll create our own. May reached for his hand, held it, refused to let go. And for the first time in a very long while, the world grew quiet. Not because it had ceased talking, but because in this moment, they no longer needed to listen to anyone but each other. 1 year later, the world hadn't quieted, but May had not silenced, just settled. Like snow falling on a city that had finally stopped rushing. They were married on a crisp December afternoon in a small stone building between a cafe and an art gallery. No press, no spotlight, just warm candlelight, a few close friends, and vows whispered like promises rather than performance. May wore a dress she had designed herself. Simple, meaningful. Liam wore a suit he refused to replace. The same one from the night he first felt at home with her. Edinburgh watched them kiss beneath paper lanterns, with neighbors quietly cheering from across the cobbled street. By spring, May was back in university, studying photography part-time, but fully committed. Liam helped create a corner studio in their flat, where camera lenses lived beside textbooks, and laughter always found its way through the door. You're teaching me, he told her one evening, smiling as she explained composition techniques. You're reminding me why I need to dream, she replied. Their love extended beyond themselves. Together, they opened the Frame of Mind Center, a space for disadvantaged youth to learn photography, digital arts, and creative coding. May taught visual skills. Liam taught technical ones. The children called them Miss M and Mr. L. Parents came too, not to ask, but to offer homemade treats, assistance, stories. The center became a place where effort mattered more than status, a place that helped young people envision new possibilities. One night, after an exhausting but fulfilling day, May sat by the window with a mug of tea, the city glowing beyond the glass. Liam joined her with his own cup. You're quiet, he said. I'm thinking, she replied, about everything I almost missed. He turned to face her. Almost let fear win, she admitted. But you waited. You believed. Liam took her hand. You did the difficult part. I simply stood still long enough for you to see it. She leaned against his shoulder. Outside, the city began to settle into night. Later that week, they walked through the same street where it all began. The corner shop was still there, the same lamppost. Snow was falling gently around them. Liam smiled. Amazing how one cheese toastie changed everything. May slipped her arm through his. I think it was the heart behind it that mattered. They stood for a long moment, snowflakes gathering in their hair and on their coats. No audience, no commentary, just love. Do you think we'll ever forget what life was like before this? She asked. Liam shook his head. I hope not. Me too, she whispered. Then they walked on, hand in hand, past the places they had been, toward the life they were creating. Behind them, their footprints gradually disappeared beneath fresh snow. Ahead, only possibility and a love built not from perfection, but from choosing each other again and again. Sometimes love doesn't arrive with grand declarations or perfect timing. Sometimes it appears quietly, cold, hungry, and unexpected. And if you're brave enough to share even your last bite of food, it might just remain forever. May and Liam's story reminds us that no barrier, not wealth, not past, not fear, can withstand kindness, trust, and two hearts that choose each other every single day.